Hello, welcome back to the third installment of my collaboration with Christin Curtis. For this series, we've been talking about the mouth and speech and whether we glorify God with it or condemn ourselves with it. This has been a really fun thing to do, and we're going to try to do another one maybe in a few months. Depends on which one of us gets the idea for what to talk about. In this episode, there was some technical issues with Wi-Fi signal, and so you'll notice a few places on her end where the video is out of sync with the sound. But overall, it was a good discussion, so just ignore those places. I hope you enjoy our discussion. Today we are talking about gossip.
Gossip and slander.
Our final installment, and we're going to try to keep it down to 30 minutes of recording. Yes, gossip and slander, because the Bible sometimes uses gossip and sometimes uses slander. I have a feeling this is going to be similar in scope to the first discussion, which I feel like is more about your actions, whereas when we talked about scoffing, it seemed to be more about your heart, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, they're all about your heart, you know what I'm saying, but when we talked about scoffing, it was like, it was a character issue. Or it seems like you can have fairly good character, but have some bad habits that you need to, you know, pray about and change in regards to gossiping and slander.
Where do we start, Rachel? Like, where do we start with this?
Well, what I did want to bring up this article that I sent to you, and I'm going to put the link to it as well in the description of this video when it goes on YouTube. Because I was looking up, I was like, does the Bible discuss why people gossip? It talks about, like, don't gossip. If you gossip, you're this kind of a person. Like, you do this. When you gossip, you sow discord and spread lies. Don't do it. But I was thinking, why do people? Some people just feel this deep need. And I fall into this trap. I don't gossip, like, just willy-nilly. Like, I'm not always just eager to share. Did you hear? Oh, my gosh, did you hear? But I have certain friends with whom I will broach the subject about it, certain other people. And I'll be like, and, you know, so sometimes it'll be, this person, you know, friend will text me, did you see so-and-so's post? Because you know, we're like, we're going to go and we're going to eye roll and we're going to be like, yeah, that's just crazy. And I try to keep it to just discussing the post without gossiping about the person. Does that make sense? But even then I'm kind of convicted about, because I'm like,
I think it's better to err on the side of caution. Like, I've had to do like work through this. There's actually a book out there called Resisting Gossip. I bought it years ago when I first was like, oh, this is a sin that needs to be fought just as much as like sexual sin or just as much as greed or anything else, which we'll get to like some of the verses of where gossip falls in the lineup of sins. If we think that it's a minor one, where it falls in line and what it's associated with. To your point, it took me a while to have to just, honestly, I spent a lot of time being silent, where other times I would like take liberty to be like, well, you know what, this falls, you know, I'll take grace for this. Or, you know, I don't know, you know, I'll speak. And then, you know, if it wasn't that right, then, you know, I can go, there's grace for that, rather than like being like, oh, I mean, it just changed. I've changed. I think the Lord's just changed me and convicted me. Like, I would err on the side of silence until you can work through these issues with your conscience, and then you can move forward. Like right now, even regarding the post, like in the past, I would have maybe brought that to somebody who I knew probably would stir the pot, because you have those people, right? Yeah. You bring things to people and they just take it to the next level. Okay. So like you're bringing it, but you know that they're going to bring it. So then I was like, well, you know what? If I want to discuss the post, I'm going to discuss it. If I discuss it with some people, we can just discuss the post, and that will be that, because it's public. That's another thing, is it's public. Yeah. And that's a whole nother realm of things in and of itself. You have to judge it individually based on the circumstance. If something's public, it's for anybody to talk. I mean, it's obviously, it's not for you to talk about any way you want to talk about it, but it is public to discuss. But like, if I go to somebody and they just take it to the next level, I'll be like, well, I just want to discuss the post, or I just want to address it. It's kind of, those are more applications for later on of like how I handle people who like I know to be gossips, or who I know to be like, well, you know, like we can talk about that later. But I get it. I literally have had to walk through that. So that's just.
And another thing I was trying to think of, why would someone be tempted to gossip? And so I thought about it with myself. Why am I tempted to gossip in certain situations? and not others. And I think some of it has to do with expectations. Like, I expected this person. I'm talking about like long-term expectations. Perhaps
Okay.
if you knew somebody for a long time and you thought our lives are going to go the same direction, and then your lives didn't go the same direction, suddenly you're talking about them like, oh my gosh, can you believe? Because in your mind, it's just like, you can't make sense of the direction that this person is going. And it might have to do with what they're wearing or what they're saying, or huge life decisions. And you feel like you gotta talk about it. You gotta make sense of it in some way. And again, I'm not trying to justify it. I'm just trying to figure out why some people who even aren't necessarily gossips in every nitpicky way will turn to gossip in kind of some ways. And I don't know, it feels like it's like, I have to make sense of what this person is doing because I thought that they would do this and they didn't meet my expectations, and now I have to talk about it to say what's going on with this person. You understand?
Interesting. I honestly, that did not cross my mind, because like I would say that for me, it's just all bad. It's not like, at least it was there like some redeeming qualities of being, you care about another person. So you're like, I just don't know what to do. Like I've had those thoughts, but I think even when I was younger and stuff like that, like, honestly, I think it had more to do with people pleasing, like, pressure, people pleasing. So you say things, or you just like, it's your not form of entertainment, but it's your form of like, that's how people literally, when I learned about this, not learned about it because it's always been there, but when it really hit me, I was like, what else do people say besides this? Because that's how people talk. This is like, just like how it says that men's heart's wicked, like we're deceitfully wicked, and out of the heart comes, these things out of your mouth. It's like, it's air. It's just water. It's what you're drinking. So it's like, what else would we have to say if we're not talking about this? What other things are there to say? I never got to like that degree, but it doesn't really matter to what degree you've got to it if you have gossiped or allowed yourself to listen to gossip.
And I think there's a difference between how you talk about somebody you love as opposed to somebody you don't love. Like, I've discussed, I'll just say, I'll focus on conversations I've had with one person, and we talked about different people. So me and this one person, we've talked about someone over here, and we have talked about it in a way that we feel like is protecting this person's character because we care about this person and we're praying for this person. And then in another way, we talked about this other person, and we're not really trying to protect their character because we're sitting in judgment of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's like, you can be having conversations about people, and whether or not it's gossip or not kind of really depends on whether or not you love them or not.
So I'm actually curious because I know a lot of people I've talked to have different definitions of slander and gossip, which means that they're able to justify their actions based on how they define slander and gossip.
Yeah.
So I guess the biggest thing is like what scripture defines as being a gossiper, being a slanderer, like actually what it is. And the definition's very broad. It's broad enough to be like, ooh, maybe my definition of slander and gossip isn't right. So, I mean, I think this one is...
Is this from the Bible or from the Merriam-Webster's dictionary?
This is from Blue Letter Bible.
Okay.
They have the Strong's Concordance. I would recommend it to anyone who likes to know Bible words in Greek or Hebrew.
If you're like me and you like concordances...
You should look at the Strong's...
Especially the exhaustive kind of concordance.
You can know what they mean. So it's a whisperer, a secret slanderer, which, I mean, reviler,
But see, there's the thing, like, reviler. Like, if I'm talking about somebody in a way that I'm not reviling them, is that... Because you're not slandering. It depends on if you're slandering, I guess.
Yeah, but then it comes into, like, the realm of, like, whisperer. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, okay, so most people would define slandering as saying something about someone to someone else who has no authority or ability to be able to change that. Yeah. So you're telling someone else that really can't do anything about the situation.
Except commiserate with you over it in some way.
Yeah, like, well, about somebody else. So there's literally like no redeeming value. Nothing can be done from it. So like, obviously there are certain times where in church discipline, for instance. Okay. So let's just say there's someone in your church that you know is living in a certain sin. You go to them one-on-one. You plead with them. You bring scripture to them. If they're not going to listen, it says to bring around someone else. Obviously, you hope that that squashes it and that they repent and they come back. If not, you have to go and tell this to the church. That's not slander to do that when you have followed the proper steps, mind you, to go about this so that the church knows. Some people would say that that's slander. Some people would say that's wrong. In fact, but Jesus told us to do it, which is crazy. It's literally insane to me. But like, go to the church and then they are the ones that start to deal with it. So like, for instance,
but again, there's a covenantal quality there, because you're not in Facebook world or whatever. We can be talking about people who live miles and miles away and they don't go to our church,
Yeah. I mean, it's true. That's why it's like, ooh, I feel like it's circumstantial where you're going. It's circumstantial because it says the slanderer uses the tongue to slander, to accuse. Usually slander, okay, so slander in like Merriam-Webster world, I don't have it pulled up here. In law is something that's false. So you're intentionally saying something false about another person. Whereas gossip, I don't think necessarily is false. That's the main difference between the two. Gossip
again, I would say gossip can be true, but if it's reviling, that's kind of a key word in my mind, speaking negatively about them, and they can't defend themselves in that moment.
Yeah, they're not there. There's just so many things you could say about certain things about gossip, but it usually happens like the picture that I get of gossip and slander is that the fact that you have to whisper, because it's used in both phrases. So like the fact that you are whispering shows darkness. So like if you have to do something to cover up something that's in darkness, you can almost 100% be guaranteed that you are probably sinning. And so you can't do it out loud to where people could hear you. If you can't do it, and once again, this is not a blanket statement, because once again, like church discipline is an exception. You don't go and just blast people's stuff on there, especially like if they're repenting or if they repented, or even like if they haven't, there's certain ways to go about addressing things like that,
So yeah, if I'm talking to you and someone walks in the room and I'm like, oh wait, then maybe what we're talking about, if we shouldn't have been talking about,
I have another definition of slander that I don't think a lot of people think about, and that is that slander is used to accuse. So what is Satan's name? What is his actual name?
Well, the accuser, Satan.
The root word of it is the accuser.
Satan,
He is the accuser of the brethren. He's a slanderer. Yeah, and it's the same root word. So accuse is the same root word as slander. So when you use your tongue in that way, you are really, in a very real sense, what Jesus said, you're the son of the devil. Like you are, that is how you're acting.
Because that's what he does. He stands at the throne and in the presence of God, apparently, slandering us.
So we have verses. Do you have a verse you want to share? Do you want to start just getting in and diving into what this actually practically looks like so we can talk about them?
Leviticus 19, verse 16. Do not spread slanderous gossip among your people. Now that's like a direct just command from God. Like that's not just Peter encouraging the Christians to put away. It's not just Paul saying get rid of all slander. This is God saying don't do it. To me that stuck out. I was like, ooh,
I think we don't see how crucial it is. I don't think it registers how our mouth okay, I'm just going to say this because I thought about this earlier, but okay, we'll just read 2 Timothy. It also says it in Romans, but in 2 Timothy, but understand this, that in the last days, difficulties will come for people this is a definition of the kind of people at the end days, like the kind of moral decay, it's a picture of moral decay at the end of people who are unbelievers. For people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving, treacherous, reckless. It goes on with this. It doesn't get any better towards the but denying, having the appearance of godliness. So somehow, even in the midst of having all of these traits, they appear to be godly, but deny its power. Power for what? Power to overcome the sins that were mentioned here. Avoid such people.
I've always thought of that being like denying its power, like somehow power over the cosmos, but it could also just mean like its power to change who you are, to affect your behavior. And it kind of goes to that article that I was mentioning where it talked about the two reasons people do this. And number one was that they take themselves too seriously, and number two was that we don't take God seriously enough. That kind of goes along with that, what you're saying about denying its power.
Yes. And then in Romans, when it talks about like who people are outside of Christ, it has, slanders, gossips, in the midst of like adultery, in the midst of fornication, in the midst of greed and covetousness, in the midst of murder. Like murder and gossip and slander are in the same paragraph. Yeah. I don't think it was the first time that I heard someone say this, because you would hear a lot of times that like murder will send you to hell and these things will send you to hell. But it's like, yeah. But then just to see that in the same sentence, the same paragraph, the same context, and to say your mouth will send you to hell, your lying will send you to hell, your gossip and your slander will send you to hell. That changes the way and the like of how it makes you think twice before you open your mouth, which it should, but that's how we should always be. Just like you said in Leviticus, this was a direct command. This wasn't any less of a command than to not murder our brothers or sisters or to defraud.
But yeah, it goes along, gossip always goes along with much bigger sins, like, jealousy and anger. Like then 2 Corinthians 2:20, Paul says, I'm afraid that when I come, I won't like what I find. You won't like my response. I'm afraid that I will find quarreling, jealousy, anger, selfishness, slander, gossip. Both of them are listed there. Arrogance and disorderly behavior. You're right. It kind of always runs along with all these other things that some are really, really bad, and some you would think, well, that's not so bad, right? Like disobedient to parents, but no, those are all blanketed.
I think that it's like the mouth is just, which is why we did this, right? Because like we don't think our mouth is sometimes a big deal. We do if it causes big consequences. That's when we think, oh, this is a really big deal. But we do not understand the moment that words come out of our mouth. I mean, I literally just keep coming back to when Jesus says every idle word, every single one, the fact that every word is like counted, I'm like, oh, mess, like without him, I mean, it's a real thing that we should really ponder just the weight of our words, like, and even the fact that like, this has nothing to do with slandering or gossip. This has more to do with lying, which, by the way, why didn't we cover lying? But it's fine. We'll go over.
I don't know. You think, well, that's one of the 10 commandments. Like, everybody knows lying is bad. And everybody technically knows that gossip is bad, but it's just, I don't know.
I think it's because it's scarily, like I said, it's like water. Or it's just like air. It's like speaking. Yeah. Because it's so common that you're just like, oh, if this is bad, then I'm in real big trouble. Because, like, that's just what it is. Yeah. But what Jesus says, when he says, like, you've heard it said this, fulfill your vows that you've made to the Lord. But he says, I don't even want you to vow at all, saying that, like, the use of your mouth, you should literally be able to say what you mean and mean what you say. And it's so pure that that's it. You don't need a vow. You don't need anything. So in the same way, we should be using our mouths in such a way that what comes out is just pure. Pure, all the time, 100%. And like, there's another one, and this is more application-wise towards people. The one I read before was in 2 Timothy, and it said at the very end of that, denying its power, the power of godliness in their life. It said avoid such people. Well, let's just go to Proverbs 20:19, and it says, whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with a simple babbler.
Yeah.
Okay.
I read that one.
Over and over again, the people that we should avoid, which, by the way, also is not a very popular concept today, is that you actually should not be associating with some people because they're like, that's so judgmental. And it's like, but you could be
good people on the inside. I mean, how can you be so heartless as to say, I'm not going to associate with you? Aren't Christians supposed to love everybody? Come on, Kristen.
Oh, man. Okay, do you have any more verses? Because I could just go to town on this one specifically.
I just want to read the very end of this quote. In the article, he quotes Jim Cymbala from the Brooklyn Tab. And at the very end of that quote, he says, I know what most easily destroys churches. It's not crack cocaine, government oppression, or even lack of funds. Rather, it's gossip and slander that grieves the Holy Spirit. I mean, he says, powerful and so achingly true. I mean, that's not scripture, but I just thought that was really good. Going into James, I feel like, we've been talking about the mouth and the speech and kind of haven't really gone into that passage in James where it talks about the tongue is a fire and burns everything down. And so I'm going to quickly read this is from the Message, James 3:6. A careless or wrongly placed word out of your mouth can do that. By our speech, we can ruin the world, turn harmony to chaos, throw mud on a reputation, send the whole world up in smoke, and go up in smoke with it. Smoke right from the pit of hell. Gossip is part of these things that is from hell. And like you said, I mean, you're in league with the devil, literally, because Satan means accuser, slanderer. That's literally what he does. That's his MO, and we're partaking in that when we're slandering and gossiping.
It's really hard to say anything right now because when I hear that, it just makes me sit in it and just realize the weight of what comes out of my mouth. I think the moment that you realize that, you just repent. You have to, and you beg the Lord to change your speech. And honestly, I mean, maybe this is more application wise, but I've had to change friends. I mean, I didn't tell them. I wasn't like, we're not going to be friends anymore. But like, if I didn't want to sin and I was serious about it, and I didn't want, because I also think that listening to gossip is a sin. Okay. Because where it says that there's where a slander or whisperer are, it fuels the fire, but when you take it away, it goes out, the fire goes out. Yeah. Well, in order to fuel
something in Proverbs about that.
Yeah, Proverbs. But the thing about the flame is that you have to have someone to listen to. A whisperer has to have someone on the other end to listen to them. If they don't have anyone, then it goes out. They're like, oh, I can't. So like, if you're that person, that was the other thing too. It wasn't as much that I was using my mouth to say things. It was more that I was listening, or I felt bad. This was my people pleasing. I felt bad not listening. You feel bad for like, or you are just afraid of them. Not even bad. You're just afraid of them. You're just afraid to be like, what if I say something? Or, like, what if I'm like, this is gossip. You seem like one of those people at the time that
you're no fun.
Yeah. Now I'm just like, whatever. I don't really. Someone said something, and this may be a big thing. I don't want to bring it up. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to discuss it. But they brought up the things that's happening with like Robbie Zacharias and stuff like that, and all these things that are coming up. I haven't read a ton. Mm-hmm. Once again, I don't want to get into it. But like someone brought it up, and I literally, this is what I said. The Bible has a right way to go about accusing people, and I'm not going to be part of this right now because it doesn't go part of that. So like, let's go follow that. Like, I'm not even going to entertain this right now. Yeah. Like, this is just like, go to the means that Scripture uses to address and correct.
Yeah.
Accusations.
I feel like these people are doing, just in that kind of touching on that situation, they're doing, I don't know if they're going into court with it or what, but I'm just kind of like, what are you trying to achieve here? Because the man is dead. Like, yeah. I don't understand what you want other than money from his estate. And I cannot see that that's in any way justified or holy. I just can't. I mean, it's like we want to tear down the reputation of all the wonderful things he did because we want to focus on this bad thing. And I don't even know if it's true, like you say. But even if it is true, it's like, if he was alive and you were going to somehow bring him to reckoning because he was just steamrolling through his career, I could see how you could, like you say, go about it in the right way before, pastors and elders and, stuff like that. I don't really see why you'd need to drag him into court over it. Paul also said we shouldn't be dragging one another into court. But he's dead. Like, he's dead. Like, I don't even understand at this point what they're going to gain that's of any spiritual value.
It just does more. Sorry, this is a huge side note. At least until, like, this is a huge side note. But, like, this is what slander does, gossip. This is what it does, literally. Because, first and foremost, like, any of the commandments that we have is not primarily towards one another. It does affect one another, and we are called to love one another. But it's about God. Like, it's about a relationship, and it blasphemes his name by watching. Okay, so why does he tell believers not to drag one another into court? Okay, so one of them is about relational. Two, it's also like, do you guys not know that you're going to be judging angels? Like, literally, do you not have enough sense to be able to, like, discern. But then later on it says, like, just in general, like, it blasphemes, like the Gentiles laugh. They literally laugh.
It's a spectacle. It's a spectacle to them.
Stuff. Yes. Like, but that's what slander and gossip does. If we are saying that we are holy people, we're different. Not that we are saying that, but the Lord is saying that. And yet we cannot, like, we are not walking in godliness. You know, like, it blasphemes his name to those who are watching. We need to redeem the time. We need to redeem, like, we need to watch carefully and guard how we walk among outsiders, so that when we are reviled, when we are slandered, oh, what is that? So when that happens, that they cannot find fault with us. That's how we ought to be walking, because they will slander. They will persecute. We're going through the Beatitudes and something else for my work. And part of it today was blessed to be persecuted. And it says, when men revile you, when they persecute you, you know, like, falsely. So there should not be true accusations, you know, to be able to bring.
There should be false accusations. The last verse I want to share in Psalm 41:6, and I don't know if this is a Psalm of David or not, but I typically attribute them to David if I don't know whether or not they are. It says, they visit me as if they were my friends, but all the while they gather gossip. And when they leave, they spread it everywhere. You know, that's kind of like speaks to the duplicitousness of being interested in something somebody's going through. But in reality, it's to turn it around on them, you know?
Which is why, like, I think all of our other episodes have led one on top of one another, because flattery, like, how do people gain secrets? Through flattery, because they gain your trust. So we talked about flattery being on guard against people that are smooth talkers, not just trusting everyone that comes to you that pretends to be your friend, especially if they are known. Like, this is my thing. I watch your life, and if you are so quick to tell me other people's stuff, and it's like, well, I'm telling you this in confidence. You're quick to do that, then I'm like, hey, anything I tell you can also be told to other people in confidence. And discerning about our friends and the people that come to us. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are circumstances where you do have to tell someone something. I think for safety reasons, like, that may be in confidence, true confidence, where it's like, you need to know this, okay? Like, you have to know this, and this is just it. There are others, it's just like, no, actually not. So this is where I kind of want to, like, have an open-ended, how have you dealt with fighting against gossip yourself, but also listening to it. So maybe we'll go with that first. How have you dealt with, like, not gossiping or slandering, like, putting it to death, but also not listening to it?
Not well. No, I don't know. Because like I say, I feel like in a lot of cases, in general, I've done well with it. And then with one or two specific people, I fall. But in general, I would say if you want to be better about not gossiping, I feel like it has to do with not giving things a weight of importance that they don't deserve. I feel like people who gossip a lot, they think everything they're talking about is important when it's not important. It also has to do with your own identity and where you think, what you think is important. I remember teaching middle school, and I remember that's where that all starts, you know, like really, it really starts there. And it's because when it's like, oh my gosh, Kristen, I've got to tell you this, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to be like, oh, can you believe it? It's because when we're doing that, it makes us feel important in that moment. Drama it like gives your life some sort of purpose. And I would say people whose life has purpose elsewhere don't seek it in gossip. They don't. They just don't care about that, because it's like that's not what makes them feel important, you know?
Yeah. I would completely agree. That's a great, honestly, when people think of, like, reasons that you gossip because you're bored, which, by the way, it talks about that with women in the Bible, that if you're busybodies, you're just going around to people's houses talking about stuff, you're just idle, you're like, oh, I got nothing to do. So you're bored. You don't have a lot of work to do, so you better get to work. Like, literally, those are my rebukes. Like, you literally are wasting time. Are you bored? Do you just not have a job? Like, I don't know what you're doing. And I don't mean, like, 9-to-5 job. I mean, just, like, anything that you can do that's productive other than running your mouth.
Just go do laundry.
Also, it's arrogance, because you think you're better than other people, which is why people gossip. You think, like you said, it's really important. Like, you find your validity, or it's just entertainment. which goes along with being bored. So it's like, or you're just like the most like you hate someone. I mean, that's everything. That's the blatantly obvious. You hate someone. You're like, I hate you, so I'm going to talk about you to other people. I just don't care about you. So, I mean, that's like the base root. So that's good. It's like if you find your identity, so yours is if you find your identity somewhere else, you're not going to be tempted. You're not going to find the need to find your identity in someone else's life or like be filled with like someone else's stuff. Like you got your own life and you're like, they have their own life. Why are you talking to me about someone else's life?
And what was point number 2? You were asking the question number 2.
How have you fought against listening to gossip?
Okay. So with listening to gossip, I don't know, it's hard because that's easier to do. As far as you can have control of your own tongue, but it's easier to listen to gossip because it's salacious. I would say it's for the same reason some people watch soap operas or or even just dramas on TV. It's kind of like it gives you an escape into someone else's life or something. I don't know, or maybe allows you to sit in judgment, and that can be a boost to your own ego. I would definitely say boredom is a big part of it, like you were saying in the first point.
Good.
But so how would you do better about not listening to gossip? Find other things to do. Like you say, it's kind of like I learned in this ministry I was training for a few years ago. You can't just stop thinking a thought, but you can replace one thought with another thought. Yeah. So it's not that you just I gotta stop listening to this gossip. Stop right now. It's like I need to change my focus to something else.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I also think that changing, like making hard lines about who I associate myself with has been a really big deal. So like I'm still friends with some of these people, but like I know I've made new friends in the sense of like, I know when and I've also had to be very intentional. I'm also a lot more intentional about what comes out of my mouth, which you should be, but like of what I'm saying to this person. So like some people, you just feel like comfortable. And so things just kind of flow out. But I've noticed when I did that with those people, that they would hold on to like the one thing they could gossip about and then like go into that part next talking point. And I was like, I mean, like pulling it out of somewhere, like literally like pulling it out of, and I was just like, okay, so now when I talk to this person, I need to keep it on this. I cannot share any personal details. I cannot share anything that's going on about anything that could possibly be like, yeah, oh my goodness. Like, well, this person, no, nothing that I can even lend towards that direction. So I keep it like, it's sad, but like, that's what I have to do with people. Like some people, other people they're just great. They just like zip their mouth. Like my sister's a great example. She would never want me to say this probably. She's over here, but she's fantastic. She hates gossip. She hates slander. And so like literally, I might bring up something and she's like, well, have you talked to that person about working through a scenario that's personal to me? She doesn't go like, they're the worst or they're the best. She's just, hey, what is like, have you gone to talk to about them? This might be a good talking point or doing something else, So now I can get counsel from certain people and know that I'm not going to get any kind of like natural bias, or if she is biased towards something, she's like, I'm not a good person in this because I will be biased. She's just very good about that. So if I go to counsel from certain people, it's not to get out any kind of frustration. It's literally to get counsel because something's really difficult. And she's one of those that's like, you know what, these would be the next step. So once again, slander or gossip is disclosing information to people who have no authority or don't have the ability to change the direction. So like even with my sister, there's certain things and details I won't tell. That doesn't mean you tell all about a situation when you're getting counsel, which is another point. Like you don't just, when you go and get counsel, this is a side note, you don't have to say every single thing that is going on. I mean, there are circumstances, I would say, with elders and pastors where sometimes it's necessary to tell those things. But when you're getting counsel about normal things, you don't need every single detail that will literally paint a person completely this way. But sometimes you do need to bring to light, like certain things that are not right, much like church discipline in the beginning. If you're bringing another person around, it's because you have to disclose some kind of information mutually that you're going to bring to a person in order to restore. Anyway, can I share something really cool?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I don't know if it's, I love it, but my department specifically at work, and then also Dave Ramsey's another one, but like we have a no gossip policy. So it's one of the things that you can get fired for. You will get fired for that before you get fired for like not knowing how to do your job. So like if you like you can be trained at your job. This is what my boss says. He was like, you can be trained at how to be faster at your job or to answer phones better at your job or to respond to emails better at your job or whatever else. But I can't teach you to be a kind person. I can't teach you how to have self-control. I can't do that. So if you don't have that, you're not going to be here. Like, because it destroys teams, it destroys environments. He's like, it is not tolerated. Like you will get a warning and then you will not get a warning. You will get your. So I love that environment though, because it really is like, you just know if somebody's like, I'm not going to listen to that. Or like, you know what, I've had to go up to somebody and be like, hey, you know, like, I feel like that was gossip. What just happened? It's like, I'm so sorry, da, 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 you know, like whatever this is. I mean, it was a serious, it's not tolerated. I love it. It benefits everyone who's in that environment. Yeah.
It just brings peace, you know.
Yes.
Like the verse in Proverbs says.
Like it's true.
Well, this has been a good discussion. This has been a good 3-part, you know, collaboration, and I really enjoyed it. I'm glad you suggested we do it.
Thanks for doing this. I love getting to talk with you about this.
Yeah, it's been fruitful, and it has affected me because it has affected some of the ways, like, there's been, you know, people don't know when you're like on social media, they only know when you do respond. They don't know when you don't respond, you know, so, but obviously it has actually had an effect on when I choose not to respond. I'm like, I can't glorify God with this response, so I'm not going to waste my time doing it. So thank you for that, Christin.
It's been so good for me too, from just like, I think just the fellowship in this, because it's so rare to find someone else who wants to do that. You know, most people would be like, well, it's kind of like, whatever, if that's what you want to do, cool. Or others would be like, that's too much. You're being too extreme. And it's like, I don't think there's an extreme to avoid sin, but I'm thankful for you.
Oh, thank you. You're flattering me. Stop flattering me. Thank you so much for being on here, and I will sign off now. You all the devil and the devil is bad. You all the devil and the devil is bad. You all the devil and the devil is bad.